Hey everyone, welcome to this weekly Sidereal Astrology forecast for the week of June 16th to the 22nd of 2025. All right, so this week we are coming off of that full moon early last week, and so it is a great week to be implementing any new perspectives, anything we've wanted to pivot with since around early last week. This week we are coming off of some of the squares from last week. Last week was collectively challenging, most notably with this week coming off of the Mars square Uranus. Anything that was erratic or involved having to get outside the comfort zone or just be a little bit more adaptive is starting to wane. That's starting to lift off here coming into the week. As we do get to Wednesday, we'll be in the third quarter moon. That is, again, really good for implementation, really good for action, and very likely when we'll start to notice things manifesting from the full moon shifts from last week. Now this week we do have a yearly energy. Again, we have Jupiter, the planet of expansion, in a square or clash with Neptune, the planet of spiritual connectivity. And so this is actually, in my opinion, a little bit more on the easier side for most squares, since it's involving Jupiter and Neptune do tend to fairly go well together. So this could be a week of perhaps being quite aware of those spiritual insights, the intuitive world, the spiritual world. Great time to be learning about this stuff, both inwardly and outwardly. And just a good time to implement some more of this willingness to connect to both the flow of life, which is Neptune, but also that open-mindedness of life, to be open to our hopes, our wishes, our dreams, and to follow them. Now with squares, there can be over or under extremes, so we just want to make sure that we're not going to either of these extremes with hiding away or escaping or things like that. But all in all, it should be quite constructive. So that's going to be around the Wednesday time. Then Friday, the sun goes into more communicative and learning Gemini, where Mercury's already been, so adding to that energy. We have the Summer Solstice on the weekend, marking the halfway point of the solar year. And then the weekends with Mercury going into more protective Cancer. We're starting to now get into more of the personal aspects of life. We have a minor aspect with Mars and Jupiter, and the sun squaring Saturn on Sunday, maybe some things to be a bit patient with over the weekend. All right, so let's go and take a look at all of this here in more detail when we return. Alrighty, so here's the sky for this week. We're going to look at this for each day of the week, starting first with Monday, June 16th. And as you can see here, we are using the visible sky on this channel, which is very different from mainstream astrology. In mainstream, you won't see this because unfortunately they're using the seasons, which is not the visible sky. So if you are new to this channel, definitely check out that link down below for more information because the signs do change. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a little bit of a recap here coming into the week, since we do have some sign changes this week with the Sun and Mercury. So this week, the Sun finishing Taurus as we approach Friday. It's been a lunar month, a great time these past weeks to be cultivating more of the resourceful qualities of life. So inner resources, self-worth, self-reliance, outer resources, maybe the material world or the natural world, or abundances that way. And so it's still really good to be focused on this way. And this isn't going to be, really ending, since Venus will be going into Taurus next week. But the sun here finishing up as we approach Friday. Now Mercury is well set in Gemini, where the sun's going to go into. So there's definitely a curious and interested energy to be utilized this week and the coming weeks. Gemini is all about synthesizing. So synthesizing information, making it a great time for learning and that kind of curiosity, but also communicatively as well. Great time to be developing things like communication, maybe a little bit of social energy, maybe connecting to our peers, neighbors, siblings, people of equal status. A little bit of this to and fro can be great. And this is all very practical. It's very practical energy with Gemini, and especially with the sun. But with Jupiter, who's recently entered Gemini, really expanding this more practical left brain, hopefully curious and interested sort of energy that Gemini is all about. Now, Mars is well set in Leo now, so there is still and will continue to be strong themes around self-expression. There is that fire around self-expression, so things that involve what we love and connecting to those things, the people that we love as well, and getting into perhaps more of this playful, creative, expressive energy where we can really be asserting ourselves and really being proactive right now with Mars here. So we definitely have a mix of energy here, perhaps more on the yang side, more on the fire and air side, as we have Venus still in Aries as well. So it's a great time to be connecting in the context of independence in relationships, more independent approach to life, enjoying the independent qualities of things, but also just a little bit of that, again, fire in general, as Venus does, as Aries is that same energy as Mars, and with Venus here is really helping us connect to that fiery, assertive, and direct energy, both to life and our relationships right now at the moment. All right, so looking at this week, all in all, it's in many ways, first of all, coming off of the squares that we had last week, most notably this Mars square Uranus, which was over last weekend. So all in all, coming into this week, we should be feeling a bit of a lift, especially in the context of anything that maybe felt like we had to be more flexible or adaptive or some unexpected things we were juggling. So definitely less of that, perhaps erratic, possibly stressful, possibly anxious kind of energy that has been more solidified since last weekend. So coming into the week, the moon will be in Aquarius both Monday and Tuesday, placing a theme around vision and progressiveness. So Aquarius is all about connecting to things greater than ourselves, which can be the world, it can be our friends or community, and it can also be just the future in general. So a great couple days here, Monday, Tuesday, for a little bit of that vision, a little bit of that willingness to connect to things greater than ourselves, and doing these kinds of things, whether it's, again, involving community or maybe technology or maybe the world or the future kind of oriented stuff here. On a minor note, these couple days we'll have the Sun sextiling Chiron, nothing major, but perhaps feeling get a little bit healed and maybe rejuvenated. That could be perhaps from some of the energy from last week. Again, last week we had the full moon in Ophiuchus, which is that healing constellation. And coming off of that is still absolutely a great week for implementing, again, any shifts of awareness from last Tuesday, but perhaps in the context of healing or personal transformation, being that the full moon was in that healer Ophiuchus. But the Sun sextiling Chiron supports this a little bit, particularly around the Monday and Tuesday time period. Now, once we get to Wednesday, we'll be in the third quarter moon of the lunar cycle. This is where it's more action-oriented. And not that we come to any major challenges, but it's a good time to really challenge ourselves. And usually with third quarter moons, we're much more willing to do that. Squares, like third quarters, are all about action. They're all about implementation. And they can be very, very constructive times. So what I would say is, all in all this week, but particularly around Wednesday, what are those shifts of awareness since last Tuesday? What were the new pivots that you took last week in general that you can challenge yourself with and really implement this week? And this can end up being a very constructive week as a result of that. Now, also here early to midweek, we do have Jupiter squaring up to Neptune. So this is a single contact. Usually with yearly energies, we have at least 3 contacts, but since Jupiter is quite fast and this just caught the square during Jupiter's direct movement, right in the middle of Jupiter's direct movement, we're only going to have a single contact with this. So single contacts usually represent something that doesn't need to be rehashed. It doesn't need to be drawn out and taken time with to implement. It's really something that we kind of get and sort of implement right away. Generally speaking. So this is where Jupiter, the planet of expansion, is in this sort of clash with the spiritual Neptune. So the clash here, though, is that there can be over and under extremes, and so we do want to moderate this. If there's any kinds of feelings of wanting to escape, hide away, which can be the over extreme of Neptune, with Jupiter expanding that, or the under extreme, maybe apathy or not caring enough about things in life, or maybe getting too dense with things. This is a good time to be mindful of this, just to make sure that we are walking that centered path between these two. But all in all, I would say it's a really good time to be very hopeful and open-minded, but still grounded though, right? So to utilize some of that some of that open-mindedness, some of that hope, some of those wishes, some of those dreams, those things that maybe a part of us wants to just go willy-nilly into. We can connect to these things, but at the same time, make it constructive, right? Again, squares are building, squares are intention, squares are action. And here it's a great opportunity to really ground and really implement some of these more woo-woo sort of things when we're talking about both Jupiter and Neptune, because both Jupiter and Neptune are very much in the clouds and the ethers, right? It's the hopes, the wishes, the aspirations, the potentials, the opportunities, right? And with Neptune, maybe some of that nebulousness or escaping kind of energy. So we do want to make sure that we see those opportunities, and that's really what Jupiter's about, to see those opportunities where we can perhaps have more peace in our life, have more flow in our life, have more mental health, spiritual health, but to go about it in very intentional, grounded, and constructive ways. And in this way, it becomes a fantastic week. There's very likely to be some very positive steps in the right direction with this, especially since Neptune has been playing a big role as of recent, with particularly Saturn. As we talked about last week, Saturn and Neptune are quite close to each other now. They'll go exact early next year. But there's a lot to be built when it comes to these hopes and wishes. There's a lot to be built when it comes to our mental health and spiritual health right now, generally speaking. And so this Jupiter square can really give us a great opportunity to make some positive steps in the right direction with this stuff. All right, so that's midweek here, Wednesday, Thursday. This is also where we'll have the moon in Pisces, so it does add to that watery energy. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Pisces is Neptune's sign, and where Neptune is and where the moon will be going over. So this middle part of the week, really good for that receptivity, healthy receptivity, connecting to our intuition, maybe the present moment, to God, life, the universe, source, whatever. The philosophy with Pisces is not important, although Jupiter can certainly help us really integrate that philosophy right now. But this is, with Pisces, it's more about, that connectivity to that source of all that is, whatever you believe that is. And so here, connecting to that flow, connecting to that willingness to listen, to be a little bit more yin or receptive, to receive from life. And being that we're in this action-oriented phase of the cycle, during this, how can we implement this, right? Maybe those mental health, spiritual health activities, maybe some healthy sleep, rest, meditation, alone time, anything that's very constructive in that etheric world. Okay, so that's midweek. The sun will then shift into Gemini on Friday, and that's going to add to more practical energy, as especially the moon will start to come out of Pisces as we get into Saturday. But let's say Friday onwards, the sun now setting the stage for what will be the next new moon around practical Gemini. And so themes still developing and perhaps getting stronger now around this willingness to learn, to gain information. Again, Gemini is very left brain and practical, so this is more in the technical side of things. It's more in the conceptual side of things, putting things into boxes, that kind of learning, organization of the mind, concepts, structure. How can things be implemented practically or pragmatically in our life? And so it favors that kind of studying or books or learning or exchanging with others, sometimes even business, trade, all these more practical things. So this is definitely getting activated here. And again, a healthy dose of curiosity and interest in things in general can really help accentuate that Gemini energy. As we do get to Saturday here, we'll enter into the summer solstice period, and so this marks the halfway point of the solar year. Great time to do a status check on the past 6 months and really see that this is the heightened energy of where we've been putting our energy, at least seasonally speaking, or in the yang energetically speaking, right, in the solar energy sort of sense. Okay, so there could be some certainly positive shifts, good time to be aware, good time to maybe make some pivots and changes along the yearly cycle as we come to that halfway point. Very similar to how very similar to how a full moon operates during a lunar cycle is the summer solstice for the year. Now, as we start to get into Sunday, we're going to start to have some of these aspects. Mars will be sextiling up to Jupiter. Nothing major here, but it's nice to see that Mars and Jupiter are in good harmony. So this is where we could be, again, maybe easing up off some of the more tension squares from last week and perhaps even with this Jupiter square midweek, but starting to notice maybe a little bit of that fiery energy or assertiveness coming through a little bit easier. This can sometimes give a boost of confidence or self-independence or self-awareness. Great time for self-awareness, self-study, and learning. But a little bit of this boost to the fire energies to give us a little bit of that hopefulness and courage or confidence that this aspect can sometimes give. It really is just a opening to use it. We don't have to, but it's nice to see it's in good harmony. Sunday, we do have a little bit of restriction here with the sun squaring up to that Saturn-Neptune conjunction. But again, very constructive. How can we see what we want to build, what we've been building, what we maybe recently want to build in our life that's more soul-fulfilling and good for that mental health that we can take some actions with, perhaps over Sunday, and just be a little bit patient with maybe some of the limitations with the Sun square Saturn. Nothing major here, but a good time for maturity and responsibility there. Okay, and the weekend we'll have the moon in Aries, placing a theme around some of that fire as well. So just a good weekend for some of that action and initiative. Okay, so let's go ahead and distill this. All in all, it is a week of implementing the full moon energy from early last week. It is the third quarter moon, most predominantly around this Wednesday time period, which is really the action-oriented phase of the lunar cycle that comes after the shifts of the full moon. We've got this Jupiter Square Neptune. It's good to be mindful and constructive with any kinds of this sort of higher realms of life and channeling this into healthy spirituality and healthy open-mindedness, which together can make it a very constructive time for anything that is more soul-fulfilling or, hopefully fulfilling, like as in our hopes and wishes with this square. Now, as we start to get to the later part of the week, the sun will shift into Gemini, which adds more to the practical energies of things. We come up to the summer solstice, marking the halfway point of the yearly cycle, making a good time for maybe some pivots, at least a status check on the past 6 months. And a little bit of boost here to the fire energies with Mars sextile Jupiter and the sun squaring Saturn, giving us a little bit of limitation, but again, where that can be very constructive for these bigger picture things that maybe we've been wanting to work on or we know will take time, patience, and perseverance. I will mention that although we'll probably feel it mostly next week, Mercury will be going into Cancer around Sunday, and that's going to add to a little bit more of the personal energies of life. Okay, so things like connecting to our emotions, our feelings, the past, and usually with Mercury communicating more this way, thinking more this way, more in that water world with Cancer. All right, so everyone have a fantastic week. Be sure to stay tuned here for the live stream. We go live every Sunday at 1:15 p.m. Eastern time, right after the upload of these weekly forecasts. You can connect to the community, ask some questions, just get involved and see others' perspectives as well. So I hope to see you all there, and have a great week, everyone, and I'll see you all next time for the next astrology forecast. Take care.